how do I have faith and confidence that what I'm seeing is accurate?
I have to put my ego aside, and I have to look at everything objectively, and I'm not judging it. I'm just watching. In poker, you have to make big decisions, kind of guessing sometimes.
You can't necessarily articulate what all of those variables are or what the data even is. It just makes sense. Can you talk any more about that?
I just think life is a big poker game. All right, welcome back to another episode, Brandon Packard's podcast. What's up, Eric? Let's unpack this.
Yeah.
I love that saying.
Yeah.
So in this one, we're going to do something a little different. Eric and I, we've been having these cool discussions, and actually this one, you're going to more so ask me about some stuff and things that we might share some similar traits in, or maybe some skills in.
Yeah.
What would you like? How would you identify the topic of it then?
So I'm sure people that have studied this will be embarrassed at the words I use to try to describe it. But instinct, right? The ability to read a room, maybe. And we both read the book by Malcolm Gladwell, Blink, where he talks about decisions that you make in fractions of a second are about as accurate as decisions that you spend long periods of time stewing over. It's things that you know, but you can't really articulate why you know them. And we talked about how you use this concept constantly in the world of poker. And so you are knowing things without being able to necessarily articulate how you know them. But then the next level of that is, how do I have faith and confidence that what I'm seeing is accurate? So let's imagine that we're sitting here playing poker, and how would you go about picking up on information they're not wanting you to pick up on, and then use that information and have the faith to actionably do something with it? Does this question make sense?
Yeah, this makes perfect sense. I love this question. This is what we've been talking a lot about.
Yeah.
This is actually the number one thing that I love about poker.
Yeah.
Because it is a game of incomplete information, opposed to chess, which I also play competitively. I played in college. I don't know if I told you that.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
On BYU's team. And in chess, it's like you have perfect information. You can make whoever plays the best is going to win. And in poker, you have to make big decisions, kind of guessing sometimes, often.
Yeah.
So for me to answer your question, what I've personally learned is that there's this concept that I have been obsessed with, and it has a lot to do with humility. It's taking your ego and your pride and realizing that you don't, like your thoughts and everything don't really matter as much as you want them to. It doesn't fucking matter, honestly.
That's tough.
And when you can just say, okay, right now, what I think, whenever I'm looking at the table and I really want to gather data, I have to put my mind aside for a second. I have to put my ego aside, and I have to look at everything objectively, and I'm not judging it. I'm just watching. I'm just simply an observer. And so I'm not saying I'm not thinking, but what I mean is a lot of people will look at something and say, oh, they said this, and that means this. And it even goes as far as, this person said he's an attorney. And maybe in my mind, I already have a picture of what attorneys look like and how they act like and how they think and their weaknesses and their strengths. And if I'm not careful, I can take my projection of what I understand as a lawyer and put that on this person because he said he's a lawyer or she said she's a lawyer. And what that does is I'm going to miss out on a lot of data because I have already determined what these things are. Does that make sense? So it's like I'm blocking my own mind a lot. Whereas they're a lawyer, it's like, okay, I'm going to put aside what I think as a lawyer, and maybe very fundamental things like they're a lawyer, they do this as a job, or they run a firm. But maybe...
Or that they have money. Maybe they don't.
Or they have money. Yeah, all the things that I would normally assume, though they might be correct, they might not be correct. It doesn't matter. Right now is the time to gather data. Mm-hmm. And it's to create baselines. So so that's a huge part of it, is gathering the data, is watching with genuine curiosity. Genuine curiosity to understand, and not putting so much of my own interpretation of what things mean yet. There's a time for that later. There is a time where you do need to take your thinking and you take all of the data that you've compiled, and then you take all of it within context, and then you make a decision with it. But you can't ever acquire all that data whenever your mind is already full of your own interpretation of what you've previously thought in your life. In life, I genuinely think that this might be one of the biggest stumbling blocks for people. And I think this is one of the thing that I work on more than anything. As a philosopher, I study philosophy in college, and I study it daily. And I think it's the ability to have the clarity and to say, I don't know, and I'm aware that I have my biases or my preconceived notions on things. So put that aside. Having the ability to put that aside and humble yourself. And what you think doesn't matter, you don't even know. So you watch people and you gather intel. You say, oh, I'm noticing that this person seems a little active. Or I'm noticing that their energy is high. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying, therefore, that means that this person is an aggressive player. Oh, this person's a big guy and he talks loud. Therefore, he's going to bluff every time. Mm-hmm. Like that's where poker gets dangerous. Like that's where people make big mistakes, because determinations like that compound, and it leads you down extremely wrong paths a lot. And that's not just poker. That's like life in general. Mm-hmm. So I think just having the ability to create a blank slate and gather the data without judging it, if you can have that skill in poker, you will be a superstar. Even the best and the best of pros can't do that very well. It's something that I obsess over, and it's become a spiritual thing for me almost. Does that answer a little bit of the question?
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. So we talked about how in the book Blink, mm-hmm. how the psychologist would put a camera on a husband and wife, or they were engaged to be married, and he could predict with like 95% accuracy whether these people would divorce within the first 3 years. And he would have them talk about anything for an hour, but he was really just looking for one specific thin sliced look. And it's
the disgust.
It's contempt.
Yeah.
And he's like, marriages survive money problems, infidelity. They don't survive, you're stupid. And so he's playing poker with these people, man.
Yeah.
So what are these looks, these gestures that you pick up on that you're like, ooh, mm-hmm. they're bluffing, or they have a good hand?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So let's assume that in my first situation, let's say that you do have the ability to just look at things, generally speaking, with an objective perspective.
Okay.
And when you're looking and you're creating these baselines, like there's a reason why he probably has them talk for an hour, because he needs to get the rhythm of how they are in their natural state.
Right.
And this is, detectives or people, interrogators, they create baselines.
Okay.
And baseline, what I mean by that, I think but basically it's, you find out, you try to sense how people are in their natural state. How are they acting when they are totally normal and natural?
Okay.
And
not in distress.
Not in distress, or even in distress. How are they acting when they are in distress? Okay. You got to create a baseline for when they're in distress.
Okay.
Because when they are in distress and then something changes, sometimes I know how someone is when they're in distress, and then what you're looking for is changes in the baseline.
Okay.
And whenever there's a moment, I'll revisit this in a second, but I want to say it's not just how they act. You have to be very sensitive to energy also. Uh-huh. Energy is so important. What is their vibe?
Yeah.
What is the energy you're picking up? And really pay attention to the emotions it creates in you. And like I said, if you have to be fundamentally, it goes to the other question, how can you trust what you're seeing? The way you trust it is you check yourself. You check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? No,
Yeah.
It's like you make sure that you're not putting your ego there, and you are paying attention to your emotions and the energy you perceive.
Yeah.
Because you're creating a blank space, and you're watching with genuine curiosity, and you're trying to understand. And this also goes into relationships and stuff. At least for me, it's worked. But I just truly believe that if you really are creating a wholesome, open space to understand and to be curious, that you can really trust instincts. Be careful not to make specific determinations of what those instincts are saying. Like, ooh, this person's energy just is very anxious. They're bluffing.
Yeah.
Boom. The dangerous part of that is saying they're bluffing. Well, maybe they're anxious because they have the nuts, which in poker that means the best possible hand.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they have the nuts,
Mm-hmm.
and they're nervous because they have the nuts, or maybe they're nervous because they're bluffing. Both could be true.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful not to associate a meaning yet, right?
Yeah.
Just pick up the vibe and just notice it, and you create baselines. I mean, so for example, I remember one time recently, I was playing poker. It was a really big game, and this guy, I could sense that he was very alpha. It was very important for him to feel in charge. At least that was probably true. That seemed like I could tell his vibe was very aggressive, he often was one-upping anybody. He didn't like to be bullied. Like if someone was betting at him, he didn't want to fold a lot. And I could tell that he was targeting me a lot. Like he had a little bit of a thing against me.
He didn't like Filipinos.
Yeah, he doesn't like the Filipinos, especially
the ones that are taking his money.
Yeah. And anyways, he was just being so aggressive, and I kept on having mediocre, pretty good hands, and I was trying to create a baseline. So I was folding, and I was trying to create this baseline to see how he felt when he was confident, when he's feeling like he's bowling. And and there's one time whenever he bet, and he made a big play, a huge play, and I had a pretty weak hand at pocket fives, which means 2 5s in my hand, but the board is wild, and I really didn't think that he was I thought he was probably bluffing, but my hand was so weak that maybe he was bluffing with a hand maybe better than mine. And he thought he was bluffing. Like he might have had a 7 on the board, which beats pair of 7s beats a pair of 5s. But so I didn't want to risk all this money, but I really wanted the data because I felt so I paused and I really sat in it, and I was present, and I was curious, what does this energy feel like? Okay, it feels like that. This is so important. What does he look like? Oh, he's got this kind of aggression. He's staring me down this way, and I got all these tells, but I didn't know what his hand was. I suspected it, but I was being careful not. And so what I did was I paused, and I could tell, because I'd created a baseline, I knew that he was a very alpha personality. So I fed into that, and I just showed my hand face up, and I said, I fold. I was like, I think you have it. I think you got such an amazing hand right now, and I folded face up, which means I gave up on the hand. But I did it to entice his, and what he did was he picks up his cards and he shows me 10-4 offsuit and this big bluff, and he shows it. He's like, yeah, like this, and he was so happy. And of course I'm just like, man, gosh, you bluffed me. And I was like,
yeah.
But he didn't know that I just studied every piece of him. I watched his energy. I felt his energy, and I watched his facial expressions and I did it on several hands in a row. And so what I really was doing was creating a baseline. And I did. And so what happened was later, we could talk about it in another episode, but long story short, I got in a big hand with him, and I played it in a way where I enticed this huge bluff. I played it, and it just, his alpha, and he just goes all in with a huge amount. And I didn't know if he had me beat or not. I had a pretty good hand, but I was like, I don't know. And then I waited for a moment, and then I went with some reads based on baselines, and things changed. And then I called him, and I was right on it. It was awesome. I took all his money, and it all ended up to that moment, right?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been able to make that decision if I didn't have a baseline and I didn't see spikes in those moments. So I'm very opinionated on this part.
Would you call that the long game?
No, probably not. I mean, yeah, you could say I'm playing the long game, and a lot of times you're playing with players for not just that game, but for months and years to come. So you're creating baselines all the time. That's the fun part of poker. But what I try to be careful of is he smirked this way instead of this way. He looked down instead of up this way. And those specific actions, you have to be very careful, because one specific action doesn't always mean this thing. It's a compilation of all the things together. I think that, whenever that little grimace that people might make in those marriages or whatever, what he was really looking for was an authentic feeling of contempt, right? And I see that in poker a lot, like there's a flash of fear, or there's a flash of, but what that is there's the baseline, and then there's a flash, and you go, interesting. And I think it takes a skill to be able to determine what that means, right? But a lot of times people say, they move their hand this way, they're bluffing. Every time they move their hand like that, that means this. Maybe it does, but I'm not, like, I've found that you need way more data, and you have to be able to let your ego aside, and if you don't know, you don't know, and it's better to create the baselines. You don't have to tell people all the data you're gathering.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
you can compile all of this and make really good decisions out with it. And it's the same thing in life, like in business and people. I just think life is a big poker game, connecting. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, I think it does. So I guess maybe the piece of the puzzle, I don't play poker, right?
Right.
So the piece of the puzzle that I'm still missing is how you have confidence in things that you cannot articulate, right? So you're making what you've described as a multiple variable data-driven decision, but you can't necessarily articulate what all of those variables are or what the data even is. It just makes sense. Can you talk any more about that?
Yeah. So I would say, if we had more time, I could get pretty specific. For example, when I'm paying attention to energy, I'm paying attention to the body the speed of the body movement. I'm paying attention to how interested they are in the cards. Like if the cards are out closer here, versus it being close, I watch how they watch their cards, and I watch how they handle their chips. Is it anxious? Is it an anxious energy? Is it a slow and confident, comfortable energy? And the way that I feel confident in gathering the data and making the decisions is because I happen to be very obsessed with the concept of what reality might be. And it's very difficult. I still don't know. I don't. How do we know what is real? And it's a deep question and very philosophical. And so I think at the end of the day, what I have determined is, generally speaking, the best determination of reality is actually our own perspective. Because we might be schizophrenic and not realize it, and we might be imagining all these people around. We might not even be on this podcast. I might just be dreaming it, right? Probably not, but it's so that's why I really do feel like if I'm checking myself and I'm watching, am I curious? Am I really trying to understand? Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm pissed off. Sometimes I'm mad that someone bluffed me, and I'm very clouded by that anger. Sometimes I'm very insecure, like I'm dealing with a hard relationship, or I got in a fight with a family member, and I'm clouded with hurt, and I'm not as curious. I'm trying to be curious, but I can recognize I'm trying to be curious, but I'm not actually curious. And I think that the closer I can get to an authentic curiosity and a genuine hunt for the truth, like searching for that, I really trust my instincts, because I don't think that there's anything more trustworthy. Like, I mean, maybe logic, maybe, I mean, science is only true until it's not. I love the process, the scientific theory. It's like you try it until it proves right. Oh, that's right. Even more so right. And it goes from a hypothesis all the way to a theory. Mm-hmm. I love that, because the theory can be proven wrong. Not you, Siri, a theory. But the confidence comes because I'm willing to bend and be flexible to whatever comes and adapt, because I'm not so set on what things might mean.
Right.
I'm open. And I think that openness gives me confidence to make decisions. At the end of it, I have to make decisions.
Yeah.
No matter whether I know or not, I have to decide to fold or to call or to raise it, all these decisions.
Yeah.
So if I have to make a decision, what is the most fundamentally trustworthy source? And I really do think that it's our own instincts, because we are emotional beings that can connect with beings emotionally, and we can sense things in the flow state, or if we're really in that mindset. Does that answer a little bit more?
Yeah. I would say I've become less confident in my ability to accurately judge a situation, not more, as I've gotten older. I don't know what that means. Maybe that's why I connect.
Well, you know what's funny? What's funny is I actually think that we might be saying the same thing in a way, because as you're saying, I've become less confident. Another way to say that might be I'm judging the meaning of something less, and I'm listening more to understand more.
Right.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Because, and that's exactly what I'm saying, I'm not going to put a meaning and say, this is what this means.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that until I have to.
Yeah.
The fun part about poker is you have to make the decision. The cool part about people is it's almost this never-ending process of trying to understand. And the fun part about relationships is you can really, you can communicate. And people are trying to tell you stuff.
Yeah.
The fun part about poker is, they're trying to hide it, and you can read them, and it's you get to measure your success with money and earnings. But at the end of the day, it's the humility. You're saying I become less confident. Well, you should be less confident. Like, one of my favorite philosophers is Socrates, because he's like, I'm the smartest guy around. I'm so much smarter than all these people, and it's because I actually am aware that I don't know. A lot of people say he was so humble. Well, he was actually a really arrogant dick. He spent all his time going around he would prove to people that they don't actually know anything.
Yeah.
But he was just trying to make the point of what we're saying is you guys are putting meanings on these things, and you actually don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
At least I can have the clarity to know that we don't actually responsibly know this. We can assume this, but it's not. We need to keep doing research. We need to keep trying to understand. Mm-hmm. So I actually would say, I would actually genuinely respect the fact that you say that. I mean, you might have said it in a negative context, or maybe a humble context, in the sense that I become less confident. Well, it's because you become less confident in something that we shouldn't be confident in. We shouldn't be confident in our first perspective, or our determination on what something means.
Yeah.
That's why people get in fights, and that's why people don't understand people.
Yeah.
Because they're saying that you said this to me? I'm offended because that means that you would have meant this towards me.
So another thing you might be doing subconsciously as well is being forgiving of yourself. Meaning that if you do judge what's happening wrong and you lose a bunch of your chips, you have to go, so you got it wrong that time, man. Do I need to beat myself up, or no, let's just play the next hand? Yeah. Self-love.
Yeah, I like that, because and we can wrap up with this because we have another meeting and stuff. But I think that the humility, because at the end of the day, things don't matter as much as we think that they do most of the time. And I think like the self-love aspect is like I made a wrong decision. Damn. And I just laugh about it. Usually I'm like, damn, like, I think you're bluffing. I call and they have the nuts. And I'm like, that happens to me all the time. And I'm like, damn. You know, like, and people, a lot of times people will laugh because I'll make some comment like that. A lot of people will be hard on themselves and they'll get upset. But it doesn't matter. Like you're still playing with your scientific method within yourself, and you're trying to, you don't have complete information. You just, that's what I love about poker is it's like life. We don't have all the information and we're just trying to do the best we can. So we think that having those specifics will give us peace and clarity. I actually think that in other episodes you've told me you don't feel threatened by things. I think the reason you don't feel threatened, Eric, is because you don't put specific meanings to things all the time. You're okay with what things might be, even if it is that or that. And you can live in a world where both could exist, and that's fine. And I think people fear, I don't want it to be that, so I'm going to pretend like it's not that, even if it might be. And they literally live based on the decision that isn't this, even though it could be. And I think that's so dangerous. And I think that that's what causes lost faith. It causes dissonance. And so I think whenever I'm just doing my best to understand, and I have to make decisions. I can't just sit around like a fruitcake, you know, or just sitting around in my house just waiting for everything to be clear to me in life. I can't do that. That's not going to get me anywhere. I have to make decisions, but it sure is a lot easier to make peace with it as long as I feel like being open to understanding everything.
Amen.
Yeah. What do you to wrap it up? What do you think? Do you agree with what I'm saying about your perspective of the less confidence you have? Yeah. So I lost my mind for about 3 months one time. And that really made me view reality differently. And so I always wonder whether the way that I'm seeing things is accurate, but it works for good and bad. I think in your case it's done a lot of good. I think it's what's given. I think it gives people the smoky chimney safe place to come to you because you're not putting meanings and judgment on what they are or their human experience. Like
how many times when we've been talking, have you said something and I'll go, man, I wonder what that means.
All the time.
I don't know, but it means something. I just don't know what it means. And so to judge what you're telling me minus knowing what that information means seems silly.
Exactly. It is silly. And the fact that you know that, I think, makes you a good decision maker better than people.
Sometimes. Man, tell my wife that.
So that's actually the whole point of this entire episode is I just want a message to all the wives out there that they need to realize that we're
tell my students that too. Mr. Hartman makes good decisions.
Exactly.
I don't believe you.
Anyways, we got to wrap this up. So thanks again, Eric.
All right.
This is a fun episode. We'll do another one later.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.